Hi, and welcome back to Enneahouse. I'm Jeremy, your licensed Enneagram professional. I'm here with my wife, Shirley, behind the scenes,
Hello.
and we are going to talk today about Enneagram Type 1. So, Type 1 is also known as the perfectionist or the Crusader. I call them Type Ice. What questions do you have, Shirley, about Type 1?
So let's see. They're ice, they're crusader, I think I've heard them called the perfectionist. How can all of these different names, because they seem so different to me, describe the same type?
Well, if you think about any type, every type is so simple a child could understand it, yet so complicated that an adult could spend their life studying it. In the case of Type 1, perfectionist is a good name. They expect perfection from themselves. They expect perfection from their projects. They have a hard time turning in a project that is not perfect. They like everything to be done neatly and cleanly and right. As far as Crusader is concerned, this is another good title. You can think of the two as overlapping each other, both sharing many of the traits that Type 1s share. Crusaders are holy knights, those who are fighting for a holy cause. Ones are not passive onlookers, they are fighters. They are the types who like to fight for the sake of what they believe is right. And as for ice, I call them ice because, like ice, they are clear, they are transparent, they are without guile. They are cool and refreshing, but they can also be hard and brittle.
I know with how you've described them in the past, they're also kind of like an iceberg. There's only a little bit on the top and so much underneath.
Well, that's how it is for everybody in reality. But the main thing that uses the iceberg analogy correctly for Type 1 is that Type 1s have a very complicated list in their mind of what is right and what is wrong. They have an internal voice that is constantly yelling at them, "You're a bad person. You should hate yourself." Which is a very sad and unfortunate thing, but it's what they deal with. On the surface, they have what they present, which is the self who follows those rules, hopefully to the letter. But deep down, they have a maelstrom that many ones have a very hard time understanding of where all those rules come from. For example, I'm going to make up a rule that no one, I believe, is going to follow. That you can't have pink flowers in your house. I don't think anybody has that rule. We're going to use the pink flower rule to give a basic, non-confrontatory example of a rule that a one may come up with.
I can't think of anything in the flower language.
Someone may have come up with a rule that says you can't have pink flowers in your house. Deep, deep down, they may not know why. They just know when they walk into a friend's house and they see pink flowers, ones tend to be an angry type. They feel angry, which makes them feel even angrier that they feel angry.
And as my neighbor, as a 9, I also do the same. I'm angry.
Yes, we'll talk more about how ones, nines, and eights process anger at another time. But in particular, we'll talk now about how ones feel that being angry makes them bad. Ones have a core desire to not be bad. They have a core desire to be righteous, to be perfect.
So if the anger makes them bad, are they Jedi?
You can think of them as Jedi, yes.
Oh, okay.
Having anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering, and all that.
Okay.
So, if they see a pink flower in somebody else's house, they might think that person is breaking a rule. That person is bad. That is an extreme example, but in many cases, ones will have this anger build up inside of them. This can lead to their hearts being at war with people who have pink flowers in their house.
So if they go to the same friend's house over and over again and keep seeing these pink flowers, they might not stay friends for very long?
It's possible. It's also possible that a one will just get over it, which sounds really lame to say just get over it. But in the end, when ones untangle the big Gordian knot that is their iceberg under the water, of all the reasons why they have to have the rules they have, when they let go of the tension that's holding these strings together, much of the time they realize, I don't need to hold anybody to this rule. Even if I hold the rule. They might have thought that pink flowers are bad because pink is similar to red and red is the color of blood. Sometimes
or an allergy, and like so and so's coming to visit, so we can't have flowers, and you have pink flowers to put in a vase. Some instance.
Yes. So sometimes it comes in an instant, and usually those instances come in childhood. The childhood message that a Type 1 receives is, it is not okay to be bad. Which a lot of children are told that, don't be bad. But what ones hear it as is different. They hear it as, do not make mistakes. Do not have errors. Do not have any kind of mess. So in the case of being told, Aunt so-and-so is coming over and she can't have flowers, seeing the pink flower that you have to get rid of will then tell that child pink flowers are bad, because the one will naturally associate that flower with being bad.
Huh.
That
A single instant could do that.
Yes, it can, depending on how defining that instance is. And the earlier it happens in life, the harder it is to unravel why.
Huh. Well, it is harder to remember the events clearly when the earlier it is.
It's true that it's hard to remember, and more importantly than hard to remember, it's also hard for a child to process complex stimuli. So, Aunt so-and-so has allergies, therefore no flowers. The therefore there is completely lost. Allergies, that means nothing to children at a certain age. Therefore, the only part that matters is we get rid of our flowers. And so flowers are bad. The flowers were pink, therefore we get rid of them. This is a very extreme example, but
Sounds
it happens
perfectly
all the
possible.
time to type 1s, because their childhood message is it's not okay to be bad, therefore I need to sweep away anything that makes it possible that I could be bad. A really good analogy that I've heard many times is the core rules of humanity, morality, are defined as a pearl. It's a beautiful, shining pearl that helps us as humans to separate ourselves from the beasts. The one naturally tries to create a beautiful display for the pearl, something that will magnify the pearl's glory. Okay, if flowers are bad because Aunt so-and-so has allergies, that mean other people have allergies. Therefore, flowers are always bad. In the end, they create this beautiful overarching display saying, we do not have flowers here because we are trying to protect you from your allergies. And in the end, people are noticing the sign, but not the pearl. The pearl is, my aunt in this one condition could not be around flowers, and the flowers were pink. The signs that are blaring in neon lights that are being yelled at by that internal voice, you're a bad person for even looking at flowers. That inner voice is yelling at them, and so they are distracted by that when the pearl, the core, is that under the water
It could
iceberg.
really go so extreme?
It's definitely possible, especially with ones who are on the autism spectrum. Ones on the autism spectrum tend to latch on to rules that were put in place for a specific instance and decide that those rules must be the case always.
That makes sense.
But anyone has the ability to create a box or a magical display around the pearl, because in the end, morality is so important to them that they want to make sure they are not violating it. So they hide their morality under layer after layer after layer of complex rules.
So these would be people who could really understand the complexity of, say, the legal system?
Yes.
And all of their complex rules and bylaws, and I don't even know all the terms.
Yes. Ones naturally have a desire for justice. And justice in everyone's mind means something different, but generally ones desire that when person A commits crime B, punishment C is given. This is the rule in a one's mind. Ones make extremely effective leaders when they are able to recognize what the people they are leading need.
So that's a strength.
It's a very strong strength. Ones make great leaders. They're the types who step forward and say, who's with me? And other people want to follow them. But there's also a weakness behind that as well. You can see that anytime there is a strength on one side, it also may reflect as a weakness. But more specifically, the stronger a person gets, the more they go up on that slope we talked about in the first video, the more their weaknesses turn into strengths. Ones can be very judgmental. They expect perfection from themselves and others. But what does that turn into? That turns into empathy and compassion as they understand that the rules are much more gray than the black and white they have in their mind, and it allows them to be extremely compassionate, extremely loving, but they have to get to that point first.
So
Okay. That's why ones very oftentimes make excellent lawyers and judges, but they have to get to the point where they recognize the grayness of the law. They cannot simply say, person A committed a robbery, therefore that person needs to spend the rest of their life in jail.
This is why we have the legal system, to figure out those complex inner workings.
Yes, because what type of robbery they committed against whom, and for what reasons, these all have an effect on the outcome. A 1 is deeply capable of understanding all of that and even saying, if A, then B, then C, then D, having a very long string of if this, then that. But their native core is to try to define everything as black and white. So they have to work at it.
So we go from this guy pushing this boulder. So it's a difference between day 1 of pushing the boulder and day 357.
That's correct. I don't know why 357 is a number that we care about, but
I don't know.
It's
a
true.
good number.
After a year of pushing the boulder, Sisyphus became that much stronger. And a 1 who has worked on understanding justice will also learn to understand the counterpoint to justice, which is mercy. One's natively at their core, when they're starting on day 1 pushing that rock, they may not necessarily desire mercy for their enemies. But when they get that rock to the top of the hill on the 365th day, they say, I understand. I understand that in order to be just, I must give mercy.
Oh. So we're going to their core, the very center of them.
Mm-hmm.
So what is at the very center of them? What drives them?
So the core desire of type 1 is to have integrity. It is to be seen as having integrity. It is for the world to call them good. It is for the world to see that pearl and say, that pearl represents me. I'm the type of person who will do the right thing even when no one is watching. They want to feel that for themselves. They want others to feel that about them. They also have a core fear, which is other people seeing them as breaking those rules. They don't want to be seen as defective, flawed, broken, or evil.
So almost the exact opposite of their drive, but like looking at a cracked mirror. Okay.
Yes, that's not the case for every type. But for 1, it's very simply good versus evil.
Well, that's nice to start out simple.
It is, but when you go back to your Jedi example,
Oh, yeah.
the Jedi were very focused on people seeing them as good. How can we be good? We get rid of all emotion. We get rid of marriage. We don't allow families. We make sure that we are serene guardians of the galaxy and nobody can say anything about us negatively.
Oh, yeah. I think they're coming out with a new movie here soon to explain some of those rules.
I didn't know that.
I don't know anything about it yet, but
what I
it's
do know
early in the works.
Is that what that leads to? It may look like Sisyphus is pushing the rock up the hill. I'm working really hard to look like I'm pure, but what actually is happening is he's actually just standing there at the bottom, standing by the rock, maybe keeping it off the ground a few feet. Because the real difficulty for type 1 is not looking good, but what happens when they don't look good? What happens when they are angry? What happens when they are hateful?
Oh, isn't that what happened to Anakin Skywalker?
That's exactly what happened to Anakin Skywalker. He had fear. What happened? They weren't going to train him because he had too much fear. Why was that a problem? The answer is because they did not have a good answer for themselves of what to do when we have a Jedi who does have fear. The answer comes out as fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering, suffering leads to being on the dark side and being Darth Vader. So what ended up happening is, in the case of Anakin Skywalker, they did not have a way to teach him how to handle his fear.
If they had, they wouldn't have been a problem. So I'm guessing ones in general need to find a way to go from fearing the fear to what?
To embracing the fear. A word that I've heard used is they need to step into it. That does not mean they should be afraid. It doesn't mean they should be angry. What it means is when they are afraid, they need to have a plan in place for recognizing it. What am I going to do when I feel these feelings? Ones need to realize that just because they have these bad feelings does not make them a bad person.
So when they get, I think you've used the word misaligned. When they get misaligned with their core, where does that take them?
So we always say that every type, when it's misaligned, starts reflecting the negative traits of another type. In the case of type 1, it goes to type 4. Type 4s are very understanding of their emotions at a good psychological state, but in a bad psychological state, they become quite moody. They become quite internally complacent. Ones, when they are in a bad place, become complacent. They become satisfied with the fact that they are in a bad, terrible, horrible world. Instead of trying to fix it, they just accept that the world is terrible and there's nothing they can do about it. Ones naturally live in an idealistic world, and when that ideal is shattered, they go to the more realistic fours who see the world as what it is. But a one can't see the world as it is. They can only see it in terms of how they have been told to see it.
So, like, if they're trying to keep their house perfect, are they the ones that would end up with those nightmare hoarder houses?
Many
if they couldn't do
times,
it?
ones will try to keep their house perfect, and everybody's opinion of perfect is different. But when a one cannot keep their house perfect, they just cannot do it, they may give up. The reality is, I can't clean my house.
So why try?
So why try? So some hoarders may be type 1s in a negative psychological state because their natural inclination is to assume that I have failed, therefore I am a failure, therefore why try?
Interesting. So if that's where they go in a bad place, where do they go in a good place?
Ones go to type 7 in a good place. 7s are known for being fun, energetic, charismatic. When ones are in a good place, they become the leaders they want to be. They become strong, they become fun, and the way they get there is the hardest thing for type 1. And that is letting go. Letting go of the pink flower syndrome. Letting go of the fact that it does not matter whether that person has a pink flower. When a 1 becomes a 7, or rather takes on the positive traits of type 7, they love and accept people for who they are. That allows them to really understand mercy, which allows them to even understand justice better. Mercy is, I'm going to let people have a pink flower in their house. The justice is, I can't do anything about it, so I'm just going to love them anyway. And when they let go of these restrictive rules that are holding them bound, they can breathe the fresh air. They literally, I feel, melt. They go from being ice to being fire. And people want to follow them.
Wow. Sound like they'd be pretty persuasive, too. So, I'm guessing those type of leaders, those type of ones are definitely needed.
Yes, we definitely need type 1s in the world. While type 1s are not the only leaders, they are the types of leaders who inspire people through their actions. They're the types of leaders who inspire people by the way that they behave. They're the types of leaders who, they may be your boss at work, but you learn a deep spiritual message from them and the way they interact with others. They're the types who people want to follow because they want to be like them. And so ones are exceedingly important in this world. And it's important that type 1s learn to love the sinner while still hating the sin.
I like that. So, their puzzle piece. That's their puzzle piece.
Yes, their puzzle piece is being the people who love everybody and can convince them to do the right thing.
That sounds really important, actually. Wow. So, on that exceedingly high note, seeing how important you ones are out there, I hope you guys who know that you're ones or who think you might be ones can go onto our website, take the test, see if you are. And I believe we have the free consultation with you to confirm our types.
Mm-hmm.
So like us, subscribe, make sure to schedule your interview with him.
And no matter what type you are, remember, improve yourself, improve relationships, improve the world. Have a perfect day, and we'll see you next time when we discuss type 2.